Hello everyone, it's Merlin here. And guys, I just got back from seeing Iron Man 3. And so I'm going to do a little review slash just kind of post what I thought about the movie with a little bit of time to think about it and let it sink in. I'm going to say right now, just before I get into a lot of spoiler territory and stuff, that the shorthand, good movie, pretty good movie, enjoyable, comic book film, good action, fairly decent character development, a lot of great witty one-liners. Um, if you're a fan of the first two films, definitely check this out. It'll probably meet most of your expectations. It's an enjoyable film. Pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. I liked it. Liked it a lot. One thing I have to say about this film is that I'll tell you right now, the trailers for this film were rather misleading because the film that I watched was not exactly the one I was expecting to get, or the one that it was suggested that we would get. Ever since they started the Iron Man films, they've kind of always been kind of dancing around Tony Stark's darker aspects of his personality. And they've often been hinting that they're going to do something overall darker and more serious and gritty with the Iron Man films. And I guess the fact that they've kind of leaned more towards this phenomenon of just being really fun, over the top, enjoyable popcorn movies, they're also somewhat grounded in reality. For the most part, found a pretty good balance that I think was best done, ironically, in Iron Man 1. Iron Man 3 and to some degree Iron Man 2 before it, both seemed like they were kind of going to go that direction. Like we were going to get Tony Stark into a darker place, vulnerable. He's in a really tough position. That's what it seemed like this film was going to be finally. And though there were elements of that, not really. It was just a really fun action-oriented story. I feel like it's more coming off of the Avengers directly because it is really a follow-up for Tony Stark after the Avengers, and in that sense, it works relatively well. The film starts out with a flashback sequence where we see Tony Stark years before as his playboy self. And not to give too much away, the primary theme of the film is something that's been carried on through the pre-Iron Man films, and that's basically Tony Stark dealing with his past, his inner demons, and trying to overcome them. And the villain of the film is a direct result of a sort of mistake he made due to his arrogance when he was younger. And it's really funny. I want to talk about this film, but there's no way to review this film well without getting into spoilers. Like it's something I realized. There are a couple of spoilers in this film. Uh, so I really hesitate now. Like I'll say, like I said beforehand, I'm gonna dive into spoilers right now. So if you haven't seen the film yet, definitely check it out. Come back and listen to what I have to say later after this point. But okay. The film is partially based on the Extremis storyline, which I read a while ago, in which a terrorist group gains access to a biological agent which essentially enhances your strength, your speed, your ability to heal, basically gives you superpowers. An old enemy of Tony Stark's, a man by the name of Killian, who's a scientist whose proposal for a business venture with Tony Stark years beforehand went sour. Basically, you can tell this guy's a bad guy pretty much right away, so that's not really much of a spoiler. And he's directly involved with founding the terrorist organization A.I.M, which is essentially a group of evil mad scientists if you aren't familiar with Marvel Comics. So it's pretty awesome to kind of get to see them because they are a big threat against Iron Man and the Marvel Universe in general. But basically, he gets a hold of this agent. However, the thing is, this particular chemical has a big glitch. It basically causes people who aren't receptive to it to explode. Obviously, kind of a big problem that was never worked out beforehand. And this is the real kicker. The evil businessman, Killian, is in league with the Mandarin. Now, the Mandarin is supposedly the primary villain of the film, and the trailer certainly made it seem like it was. And they got Ben Kingsley to play him. At first, we are led to believe that A.I.M and Mandarin's group are working together. And the Mandarin is using these soldiers, and the ones that fail, as explosive devices, using them for terrorist attacks all across the world. However, when Tony Stark's bodyguard is caught in one of the blasts nearby, he takes it really personally, and Tony had seen this guy on the news and was kind of bothered by this terrorist threat and wanted to do something about it anyway, but once it takes that personal turn, he just basically goes out and challenges the guy right there, which is kind of funny because, well, he literally tells him his address, and the man responds and sends people to his doorstep to destroy all his stuff and nearly kill him in Pepper. Though we see Tony experimenting with a lot of different technology, and he ends up getting Pepper to get in the suit, and a lot of people get in the suit in this movie, and it's pretty awesome. But the main reason Tony's been feeling so reckless is apparently since the events in Avengers, he's experiencing PTSD and is having these anxiety attacks. And a lot of it has to do with his feelings of being basically obsolete in this new and strange world filled with gods and aliens and superheroes, which is sort of the underlying bit of development that he goes through with this film. And after getting his ass kicked, Tony goes on a little investigation to figure out what the source of this biological agent is. He tangles with the bad guys and eventually stumbles upon their plan, with the help of his buddy, War Machine, who I guess the time with the comics was made Iron Patriot, but there's a lot of in-jokes about how that's kind of lame. It was pretty awesome that they acknowledged that. This is the thing. This is the thing. I can't help. I have to bring this up because even though it was a really unique twist and it was very interesting and it certainly was something that I didn't expect, I'm still disappointed by it and a little pissed off about it. They got Ben Kingsley to play the Mandarin, but it turns out that the Mandarin, okay, is a front. The Mandarin is this random actor that the A.I.M guys found. They put him on videos. They made him a poster child, when in fact they were behind the whole thing. He's just a minor figurehead in this whole plot that Killian, the leader of A.I.M, has to basically use these biological agents as weapons on the black market, as well as to cause terrorism through the moniker of the Mandarin, so that he could fund both sides, both terrorism and counterterrorism, kind of to have a monopoly on all the chaos and terror he's causing. So he's a pretty evil, mad genius. It was kind of cool, but at the same time a little bit underwhelming, because I really wanted to see... I wasn't expecting him to be the stereotypical, over-the-top, cliche wizard from the Iron Man comics, but I kind of liked the direction they were going with him, and I wanted to see something a little closer to that, and we got kind of an homage to it. At the end, the Mandarin was really just kind of a more modern, I guess, realistic spin on it, which was an interesting commentary about the whole concept of fear and placing blame on one particular person in a terrorist organization. So it was kind of a nice little commentary there on something socio-political, but even so, it was a little bit underwhelming, so I had to get that out of the way. But basically, Killian tries to blackmail Tony by kidnapping Pepper and injecting her with the virus as a way to basically say, hey, if you don't want your girlfriend to die, you better help us figure this out. And Tony tries to refuse, and, well, I'm just going to go right into another twist here. He doesn't really have to, because Pepper's body actually adapts to the virus, and she becomes a superpowered human, and whoops all kinds of ass on the bad guy. And after a lot of fighting at the end of the film, Tony manages to use the agent on himself so that he can get the healing factor, and he doesn't have to use the actor on his heart anymore. And in that sense, he also feels like he's more of a man, he can adapt, and he doesn't feel like he's weighed down by the shackles of his past and whatnot. There was a lot of really good action, there's a lot of great moments, a lot of great one-liners from John Favreau, who's happy, his bodyguard's great, a lot of great dialogue, some romance stuff between Tony and Pepper. You know, Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic, and he has a lot of chemistry with Gwyneth Paltrow, so that's really good there. There's this one little brief period where he's in the town investigating these deaths related to these terrorist bombings, and he finds this awesome kid whose father left him when he was very young, but he's really snippy with this kid, and the kid turns out to be kind of a genius that helps him rebuild his suit because he's like crashed out in the middle of nowhere, and that's really awesome. There's some great one-liners like War Machine and Tony are kicking a lot of ass in the bad guy's headquarters, and the one henchman just like looks at them and is like, you know what? These guys are weird. I'm just getting the hell out of here. You know, I don't even like working in this place. Like a lot of little cool things like that were hilarious. Just so many great one-liners. I can't remember them all. But there is this one thing. Probably the greatest moment of the film for me was when the bad guys are basically trying to, as part of their plan, they hijack Air Force One and kidnap the president because it turns out the vice president is in on it. Sorry, another plot twist there, but whoa. They wanted to try and gain control of the government that way, so it's pretty crazy how high up they got. Air Force One explodes. A bunch of people do die. But before they do, I think 13 people are falling through the sky, and Iron Man wants to try and save them all. He's like, how many people can I carry? And Jarvis tells him, you can only carry 4. And so he's like, fuck, I got to figure this out. So he, in this really awesome moment, he catches this one woman, and he talks to her. He manages to calm her down while she's falling through midair, and he gets all the people to grab each other and hold on to each other, and he slowly guides them down and kind of lands them into the water without injuring them really badly. So that was pretty awesome. That was a really awesome moment. I really like that. Probably one of the best moments for a hero in a superhero film. It's pretty cool. I liked that a lot. But now that I've more or less gone over the plot, I just want to say, I guess I'll do the pros and the cons of the film. Pros, I think that, like I said, the strength of this film is definitely in the fun aspect. It's a very fun movie like the Iron Man movies have been. It feels a lot like Avengers in the sense that there's a lot of great witty dialogue, a lot of awesome one-liners. There's a lot of great character moments between Tony, Pepper, Happy, the villains, just a lot of great stuff. Rhodey, like everybody. That there's just a lot of great chemistry. The plot is actually pretty solid. It does feel a tad underdeveloped, I guess, a little bit, but overall it works pretty well. They took some cool aspects from the comic and did their own thing with it, and it was actually a pretty ambitious plan for the villain, and it was pretty impressive. It really was. So really, from a plot perspective, there weren't too many plot holes. I mean, really, everybody was acting pretty much in character. It's by no means like a perfect, like mind blowing movie or anything, but it was still pretty good. I mean, the plot was pretty solid. The strength was, of course, in the characters and the writing overall, the dialogue in particular. The action was pretty fluid for the most part in this film. Some of the CGI was a bit touchy and noticeable in the beginning, but once it got into the full action, it was great. You got to see a lot more Iron Man suits. You got to see this new technique where Tony has a remote control device that allows him to summon all the different parts of the suit to him at once, and it kind of forms around him. That comes in handy a lot of times. A lot of great explosions in this film. There's a nice little tie into the Avengers. We get to see more about Tony's struggle, his growth as a person, kind of struggling with his old ideas of self-worth and getting over being a weapons designer, and is he really capable of being Iron Man in this new world? We see he's unable to sleep, he's having anxiety attacks, and though once again maybe a tad underdeveloped perhaps, I still think it was fairly well sold for most of the film. It definitely had its place. They made their point, and I think it was pretty good. Tony Stark is still kind of a jackass, but he's still very lovable. He's a likable, very human character that we can kind of get behind, and that's pretty awesome. The music was good. Overall, I thought some of the shots in this film were pretty damn good too. Actually, like just as there were a lot of great far shots, and some of the stuff that they did in midair was actually really really realistic looking. Some of the stuff they did in midair did not look like CGI at all, especially the stuff with the plane. Air Force One was pretty cool. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much all I have for the pros this moment. Just great witty dialogue, of course, some really good character development, awesome action, great fight scenes. Very fluid, solid plot. No real problems there. Good, fun movie. Issues I had with it. I can't pretend that I was 100% in love with this film. I really liked it. Overall, it's better than Iron Man 2. But I let it sink in. Is it Iron Man 1 good? Not quite. Not for me. It was fun. It's a really fun movie. And I guess if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. But the way I see it, it was like Avengers, but with a little less weight to it. Is the best way I could describe it. It's a lot of that Avengers fun, but with almost none of the seriousness. Like, the film was heading that direction when we thought that the Mandarin was going to be the primary villain, and I was perfectly fine with A.I.M and the Mandarin joining together, but it turned out they were one of the same. Once again, good plot twist in a way, definitely a unique turn. One thing I'll say that was great about this term too, the writing was very unique and original. Like, I did not know where it was going at a couple points. But it's kind of one of those things that after you see it for the first time, I feel like it won't have as much rewatch value for that. Like, it just won't seem as fluid at that point because they were very well done, but they'll just jut out at you. You won't be able to get as invested in the film when you see that the Mandarin is just a joke. And when you find out the vice president was in it, you're like, oh, okay. Because that comes to the biggest issue I have with this film in terms of writing, is the fact that in terms of its themes, overall, as well as certain plot points related to certain characters, particularly the villains, and their motivations, there isn't really that much developed. We don't find out really. Well, we know that the vice president gets involved because his daughter is crippled, and by supporting A.I.M, he'll help fund their research so that they can heal his daughter. But that does seem like a little bit of a stretch, to be perfectly honest. Ben Kingsley being used as kind of this almost comedian goof just seems, while fun and different, it kind of takes away from some of the rewatch value of the mystery aspect of it. It just juts out so quickly with very little explanation. What I confess, I confess once again, one of the things that's been annoying me about the Iron Man films, much like the last one with Mickey Rourke as Whiplash, they took two Iron Man villains and made one when that wasn't really necessary. We could have had the Mandarin, we could have had the leader of A.I.M. Instead they became one and the same, which is fine, but it wasn't necessary. And I just wish we could have had more development from this villain because he was a really great villain. Guy Pearce played an excellent villain. He was evil, he was scummy, he was a bastard, he was intimidating. But the whole aspect of A.I.M of evil geniuses, we got to see a little bit of it with some banter between Tony and the guards, but I hope that we get to see more because it feels like if that's all of AIM we get, that wouldn't be enough. Hopefully we'll get more with MODOK and whatnot in the future. The thing is, like, we get to see a little bit. I'm not saying that this wasn't shown at all. We get little snippets of these things, like the shot of the vice president's daughter's leg, and we get the brief flashback with Killian when he met Tony years ago. Things like that are there, they're prevalent. And I mean, and it was so obvious. I mean, even though I'd read the comic, if you hadn't read the comic, when the old fling of Tony's comes back and asks him for his help and says, "Oh, my boss is working for the Mandarin," it is so obvious that she's a bad guy and she's going to turn. There was no even slight subtlety. This woman just comes in and we know almost nothing about her. It's so obvious. Like, that was just not even an attempt to hide it, in my opinion. It was really, really obvious. I wasn't even sure if it was the same character, and I knew that. So, that's pretty obvious. And that's what I'm saying is that while the fun stuff is really good, the villains' motivations, for their plot, it's not about necessarily about financial gain. It's not about terrorism. It's not about proving a point. It's not about chaos. It's pretty much just because they're evil and they like to do it. I mean, there is a hint of motivation with Killian, and he's like, "Oh, I got turned down and I was about to kill myself, and then I realized, if I'm anonymous, I can do whatever I want and I'm above everything." Like, you can definitely reach there. Like, there was definitely something there, but they could have given us a little more, like a few lines, a scene or two. And I feel like that's where this movie suffered once again the most, as with all the Iron Man films, is the villain. Like, so far, the best motivated villain has been Obadiah Stane from the first movie, which is interesting because he was pretty good in that film, despite him being kind of cheesy towards the end. He's a fairly minor Iron Man villain. Iron Man doesn't have the best cast of villains, but there are some they could have done straight. Like, they could have done Killian by himself. They could have done the Mandarin definitely by himself. There was no need to fuse them. So I have to say I'm a bit disappointed and frustrated. And I do feel like that as fun as this film is for its witty lines and its awesome action scenes and overall fairly good pacing, the villains were just a little bit underdeveloped to me, and their plan was a little bit unclear as to the motivations and how it came about. Like, it feels like they could have fleshed that out a bit more than they did. Also, the pacing was good in the film overall, but I did feel that once it got to the third act, I was beginning to feel the film's length. It just kind of became a balance between showing special effects and defeating the villain. And though I do think that the powers the villains had allows them to give off great heat while they're healing, so they can burn through the armor, while it was pretty awesome to see all these super heated henchmen fighting all the Iron Man suits, it was a little bit drawn out, maybe. Though seeing Pepper Potts kick ass at the end was pretty awesome. They also implied that she died by falling into a fire, which was so sudden that it almost got me, but then I was like, it was pretty obvious that of course she wasn't going to die. So, in summation, I still think that Iron Man 3 is a really good movie, and I can't say I didn't like it. I really liked it. Is it one of the strongest of the Marvel movies? No. It's about the same level as maybe Captain America, maybe Thor. It's about that level. It's better than Iron Man 2, but there are some things that Iron Man 2 did better than Iron Man 3, to be perfectly honest. Iron Man 3 feels more like a fusion of Iron Man 1 and the Avengers. Just a lot of fun action, a lot of great witty superhero dialogue, great characters, just going around saving the world, and it's a really good fun popcorn movie. So if that's what you're expecting from Iron Man, a fun popcorn movie, one that you could probably watch a few times, you're definitely going to get what you wanted. It's a good follow-up to the Avengers, there is some good character development there, and the Easter egg at the end, after the credits, is worth it. I won't spoil what that is, but it does involve a certain other major Marvel character, who is currently friends with Tony Stark. So if I was going to give this film a star rating, I would probably give it like a 4 out of 5. It was a good, solid film for me. It was a good film, but not a great film, I guess is what I would say. It's good, but not great. Better than Iron Man 2 in some respects, maybe not so much in others, but definitely worth seeing. It was a good film. I enjoyed it. A pretty good start to the summer season. So yeah, guys, I definitely recommend Iron Man 3 if you're a fan of the Iron Man films, Marvel comics, or just superhero films in general. Check it out. I will say it's probably not quite what you were expecting, but it's still worth the money. Alright guys, it's been Merlin here, and I know that I've gone quite a while on this review, so I'm just going to say have a good night or a good day, and until next time, peace.